Why did Paul Heyman choose that moment to interrupt Jey Uso? Why, when Jey Uso was calling out Logan Paul, was Paul Heyman so convinced, so aware that it would be the right time to interrupt Jey Uso and to spin this narrative to the complete other direction? If Paul Heyman is telling the truth and he wanted to make this Rollins-Jey Uso match on that night, how did he know that Logan Paul would not interrupt himself and Jey Uso? Part of the fact that you have Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, and CM Punk all together is that you have a solidified group that could not be more guaranteed baby faces. This is who they are. Seth Rollins, Bron Breakker, Paul Heyman are heels. Whatever you want to say about them, whatever the reaction is that they get cheered, they get booed. This is a villain team. This is a heel team, okay? Now, the match has been made official. It's going to be on Saturday night's main event, Logan Paul versus Jey Uso for the World Heavyweight Championship. We had Logan Paul on the Raw Recap podcast, and I know that sometimes we have conversations that are storyline, sometimes not. And Logan Paul said in a very real way in that interview, because we confronted him and said, look, you keep talking about being a full-time guy. You're not a full-time guy. And he said straight up, they need to book me more then. Logan Paul said in that interview that he was ready to work more, that he wanted to work more. And I thought that that was very interesting. I think that Paul Heyman, when you look at what he's done historically since Logan Paul got to the WWE, has gone out of his way to put Logan Paul over. Paul Heyman, in multiple interviews, has mentioned how great Logan Paul is. We know, if you pay attention to what Paul Heyman tells you, that Paul Heyman has a handful of superstars that he mentors in a real way in the WWE locker room. And Bron Breakker was one of them. There is real history. There's always a reality. Whoever Paul Heyman is representing on TV, there is a reality off screen to what's going on there. The group that is Heyman, Breakker, and Rollins is a group that is defined by creating the future of pro wrestling. I mean, they're creating the future of pro wrestling. They're owning the future of pro wrestling from a heel perspective, but still one that you can't argue. You look at Bron Breakker, and even if you don't want him to beat the good guys, nobody's sitting there. When anybody says Bron Breakker's a future world champion, I have yet to hear somebody go, I don't think he is. No. Nobody says that because it's undeniable. When you have Seth Rollins being like, I'm the guy to take us there. Like, yeah, you could like or dislike Seth Rollins, but you can't deny how good Seth Rollins is. You can't. And how dedicated he is to pushing the business further. You can't. There's another guy who people say, man, I hate him. I wish he wasn't as good as he is. I wish I didn't have to compliment him on that match. I wish I didn't have to say that, yeah, I know his match with AJ will be good. Yeah. He did an amazing job with Roman Reigns in his second match or whatever it was. Yeah. This guy, if he was on TV every week, would be a world champion and probably still will be a world champion. We've been having conversations for the last several weeks about who could be the next member of Paul Heyman's group. And so many names have been thrown around, and tag teams and women and this one and that one. The thing about Paul Heyman's group right now as it stands is everybody in the group is theoretically ready to be slotted into a main event slot. Everybody in that group, if it continues to grow the way it has grown, is, the good guys are in trouble. So it's not a matter of bringing guys in that like, oh yeah, one day he'll be somebody, but right now, any main event good guy could beat him. That's not what it's about. It's about going, oh no, like that guy was already destined for fame. That guy was already destined to be the top guy. But now with Paul Heyman, it's a different story. It's a little bit more similar to when the camera panned out and we saw Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman sitting on the couch together. So with all that in mind, what if of all people, Logan Paul is the next member of Paul Heyman's group? To me, I've been sitting with this for a while, and it only makes sense. Logan Paul not only is main event ready, he's wrestled in main events before. He'll wrestle Jey Uso in a World Heavyweight Championship match at Saturday night's main event. Logan's 30 years old. He's got an incredibly athletic. He's got a lot of years in front of him, meaning he could be declared in the picture of the future of the business. The point of the group and what makes them villains is that they're the future, whether you like it or not. That it's undeniable and you wish you could deny it, but you can't. I think that at some point, something's got to change for Logan Paul. He can't just keep coming in and going like, okay, Logan Paul is going to be here for the next 3 weeks. Everybody hates him. We'll just tell a story with good guy X. And either Logan Paul will win or good guy X will win, and then we'll move on to the next thing, and Logan Paul will disappear for a while. At some point, if Logan Paul is going to stick around, he's got to have some skin in the game when it comes to WWE. He's got to have a story that is not just a temporary, 3, 4, 5 week story that's building to a big pay-per-view like SummerSlam. He's got to be somebody that's part of the active narrative storytelling going on in WWE. And to me, the more I think about it, the more it makes such logical sense. The more it is the right evolution for Logan Paul's career that he ends up with Paul Heyman's group. Because a lot of people go, okay, well, Paul Heyman's group is the new Dangerous Alliance. But a point that I made on the podcast, I think the podcast after WrestleMania, was that, or at least the podcast after that Raw, after WrestleMania, was that there's a lot of similarities here between this new Paul Heyman faction and Evolution, where Paul Heyman is in the Ric Flair role, where Seth Rollins is in the Triple H role, where Bron Breakker finds himself in the Dave Bautista role. And the role that hasn't been filled is not the next member of the new Shield. It's not the next member of the new Dangerous Alliance. But who is in that Randy Orton role? I would argue that Logan Paul becomes a much more interesting threat if Seth Rollins and Bron Breakker co-sign him and Paul Heyman is publicly and on-screen in his corner. That's become, and I hope it'll happen. That's become my new pick, though. Anytime anybody asks me, and you'll see it going forward if I'm on any wrestling show, if you see me on the street and you go, who's the next person to join Paul Heyman's group? I'm going to tell you Logan Paul, and here's why. Because I've worked it all out.